if you were traumatized in your childhood repeatedly, then you probably learned to dissociate. In fact, we all learn to dissociate. The entire society, and especially women and others, have learned to dissociate, because in a world where women are traded as commodities and bought and sold, and where their daddies think that they own their vaginas and make deals to connect families and such, it's no wonder that we all dissociate from our best interests. But if you have CPTSD, and us here, I do what I say applies to anybody with CPTSD, but I deal specifically with people with childhood sexual assault CPTSD, who, like me, were groomed and raped and sexually assaulted at such a young age that it just became part of life until you figured out it was wrong. And then you became bad and horrible and shameful, and all along we never talked. So we're talking now, we're telling now, and I hope that you will do that thing, because if we educate and advocate for change, maybe we can make some. Okay? So, dissociation is where we're at. Yesterday, I introduced you to separating the past from the present, and we talked, I'll do some recapping. We talked about the fact that being repeatedly, and this goes for CPTSD, not just childhood sexual assault CPTSD. And CPTSD can be anybody from food deprived, poverty bound. You can have wonderful loving parents and be in a war zone and witness a lot of tragedy over and over and over that makes you feel unsafe. And the complex in the C in CPTSD stands for complex, which means whatever happened was happening in such a way that whether it was true or not, I mean, I could have told, but I didn't know that, and that's the grooming part. So I felt unsafe, and the person with CPTSD has grown different neural connections because I'm going fast. If you want to hear more about that, yesterday I kind of dove into neural connections. And suffice it to say that the two parts of your brain, there's a lot of parts of your brain involved actually, and I've got lists I can go into explaining all the different chemicals that they've discovered are different in across the board in people who suffered a complex trauma in their childhood, right? But the big ones are the amygdala and the hippocampus, and it's like the amygdala is bigger, and that is your fight or flight response. That's your hypervigilance. That's why you can't sleep, right? That's why you either dissociate or run away. And that we're going to talk about that, using dissociation for good and for evil against yourself. So, as children, being subjected to complex trauma, it made 100% perfect sense to learn to disassociate, to learn to compartmentalize. And in doing so, at a time when human brains are still growing, which is until you're like 25, give or take a few years, as I was saying the other day, you're going to take what you can handle, and you're going to file the stuff away, and then the stuff that makes no sense, you're still going to remember it. You're going to feel it. It's going to be there. But it's going to live in your heart. It's going to live in your gut. It's going to live in your fibromyalgia and your gastrointestinal problems and all these things that are highly increased in people with CPTSD. And that's not saying that these illnesses are not real, that people suffer. It's saying when you are raised to feel unsafe, your brain copes. And one of the things it does is teach you how to be a goddamn good dissociator. And we don't cuss anymore, so a really good disassociator or dissociator. They're both correct. So here's the biggest problem that I find. I mean, I started writing this book, I started talking to people, I started unofficially counseling, I started studying to become a neurolinguistic practitioner, got more and more serious from my ranting and raving to I actually have something here that works for me. And lo and behold, I put it online, and 3 weeks later I had professors asking to use it for required reading and such. So I'm saying SPADES is a simple thing that'll work, and let's do that thing. So We started with S, the shame is not yours. Please review last week's, there's the intro the week before, there are 2 of those, and there's last week's. They're on YouTube Library now, but all of this goes to podcast this weekend, because I had to have 6 full episodes to go to podcast. So we've got 2 intro, 2 S, 2 P, and we go to podcast next week with Those Nasty Women Talk, who is hosting our workshop, as well as Sunday School, which is my Those Nasty Women Talk podcast, where I get a little more into the whole politics of it all. But today we're still going to do that. We're going to do a little bit of the, you need to understand what dissociation is. So, with complex CPTSD, you have learned to increase your fight or flight response and decrease your cognitive memory of traumatic events. And the problem is, it doesn't stop there when you're a child. When you walk away, you don't just stop doing that. You start applying that to every part of your life, because it's all you know, and you don't know you know it. So the problem with CPTSD sufferers, and I hate that word, so let's say people with the condition of CPTSD, is that you're caught between a paradox of not knowing what you don't know and what you do know being largely inaccurate. So let's set some of that stuff to rest. I got very overview yesterday. Today I said we talk treatments and drugs. Let's go into that. I said EMDR has had amazing results for people. I particularly am autistic. I have one of the top 10 highest IQs ever recorded, and I keep testing it to make sure. That doesn't mean I'm smart. It means I'm weird. So for me, I have an added issue that I have a deep ability to sense people and get it right. But when I hear the words, I can get it wrong. And this kind of thing happens with people who are not high-functioning autistics, too. If they have CPTSD, you learn to process the world differently. And the stuff that hurts you, you tend to kind of recreate in your own life. We go after partners unintentionally who make us feel better. But what makes us feel better is making other people feel better. And we forget all about ourselves. And while that's righteous and great, and I love to make my partner feel good, and I spend all day and night trying to do that thing, it's because I feel so good with my partner. And when I started writing this book, I didn't have a partner. So I had to take another year to like rethink, re-research, talk to people, and straighten out my own thoughts. Because, before I was all about nobody needs anybody whole. And now I'm like, wow, you don't. And that's a good place to start and where you need to get to. But being able to bond with another human being on first it has to be mental. Don't get me wrong. They need to fuck your mind first for editing purposes. They need to get into your head first. And you need to have life fit, and you need to not be wasted, and you need to know them 2 to 6 months if you are a CPTSD survivor. Because you will release chemical things in your body that we will not go into right now, because that's a whole live stream, and I'll do that if anybody wants me to comment. But women especially feel bonded to their partner once they have sex. It's a chemical release that happens, and when you already have boundary issues, that's not a good thing. I'm saying you don't want to do that. So we have to learn how to manifest the world we want. And all along, I'm like, I'm going to therapists, I'm going to counselors, I'm going to doctors, I'm telling my story, and we're going to change that word too, because changing the language of society is hugely important, and we're going to talk all about that when we get to E, the week after next, educate and advocate. But the language we tell ourselves as shame-based people, and if you have CPTSD, you are shame-based, and I do not have time to go into that now, but I did 2 whole days on it last week. Please review the library at YouTube, because it is important that you understand that. And it's always going to come up. So basically, I have to give a little recap. Okay, so shame and guilt differ in that when a person who is not shame-based does something wrong, something, an error in judgment. I got drunk and had a one-night stand. I got a B and I should have got an A. I mean, it differs for everybody what your level of intensity is and the topic. But basically, the person that is not shame-based says, I did something wrong and I'm not going to do that thing, or I'm going to not get caught doing that thing if they're a full-on narcissist and they don't care, you know, whatever. The difference is, if you're not feeling shame-based, you can fix your problem. As I was saying the other day, you can not put it all on yourself. You can say, I'm going to do better next time. But if you're shame-based, everything that happens bad for yourself and others in your life seems like your fault. It feels like your fault. And I don't have time to go into all that, but I talked about it at length. Please review those. I'd really like to go into it now, but I'm going to run out of time. So, here's what the deal is. Since we're so damn good at dissociating, I talked to my therapist, and she's like, this is kind of revolutionary. She talked to her friends and other people and asked if she could use her notes and share them. And I was like, sure. That's how all this started. My own therapist saying, can I please share this stuff with other people? And professors saying, can I use this as required reading when I put my first 7 chapters out? So I'm like, 2 years later, I've actually got a program developed and a rescue charity I had already started, which, let's get it off the ground, okay? And mostly, I've had the opportunity to work one-on-one with actual human beings like me to make me validate my experience. Pardon. I was recently disowned by my own family, or one member. One of my sisters, who wasn't even involved in any of this. She just doesn't think that it's appropriate. Thinks I'm a media whore. Those words didn't come out, but I know. We all know what that means. It's like, if I could make one person learn that they are disassociating to the point that they don't even know what sex is, right? That's where I'm going with this. Sex, love, and intimacy. We are told, and this is so confusing to anybody, much less someone with CPTSD, right? We're told that love involves intimacy, and we're told that sex is intimacy, and we're told that sex, love, and intimacy go together. So then when we have an encounter with somebody and we just want them to love us, or, you know, you start to have a feeling for them that might be physical, and then the most horrifying thing happens, and I didn't know this was happening. Then I physically shut down. I would get into the situation, do it, but at the point of having physical sensations, I shut down. And here's why. And this is what I'm telling you that you don't know. You might not. I hope you do. I hope you do. I hope you're not that person. But most people I've talked to with CPTSD, until I explain it to them, and it's a simple explanation that will actually make sense to you. Think about this. When you had sex the first time, even if it was a very bad decision, even if you shouldn't have done it and you regret it and it led to consequence, whatever, if you made the decision yourself, there were feelings physically that led you into the act of sex, if you want to call it an act, and it often is. But with a CPTSD survivor of childhood sexual assault, the second we feel those feelings and get drawn to someone, when we enter into the physical act, we feel, we don't have cognitive words for it, but that part I was talking about, that enlarged amygdala, is going, fight or flight, but you're already committed to the bridge. You're already about to have sex. So your mind fights by flying. And now you're actually in a situation you may have wanted to even be in, or worse, we often find ourselves in situations we didn't want to be in, but we never learned how to say no. So if they get us cornered, we're like, the way out is through. That's what we learned in childhood as childhood sexual assault victims. The way out is through. So you go away. You go away mentally. And the problem is you get to be an adult and you get to be in a situation you want to be in with a human you love. You know, I talked yesterday about getting into situations you don't want to be in. Let's talk today about getting into situations you do. A husband or spouse or wife or whatever your world is, multiple of those. I'm open-minded. If it's real, it's real. And if you are in that relationship and you start to feel things, you cross-associate it with the first time you felt sexual feelings. And the first time I felt sexual feelings, I now realize I was roughly 12 years old. I had already been being befriended and groomed, although I honestly don't even think my assaulter meant to groom me. This shit just happens, and that's why we have to talk about it and stop it, and we have to educate our kids. You know, I had a great family. They didn't know what was going on. My dad would have killed him. I didn't speak because by the time it was happening, I was guilty. I was guilty as the day is long, but I didn't know why exactly, and I didn't want to be there, and I didn't want to be doing it, but I still knew, because society told me that I was ruined. Society taught me that I don't occupy a body, that I am my body, that what it looks like and what's been done to it matters. You know, men have taught us that virginity is a thing, you know, because if a dick went inside of you and then outside of you, boom, you're different. Why? Because some man has decided that somebody else possessed you. So now these are social constructs. Get that in your head. That being said, no one has the right to force you to do something before your time. So back to the top. I'm getting all excited here and I do that thing. Daughter of a preacher. Okay. When you do that thing, you enter into a situation you actually want to be in now. You've moved past being used. Let's say you're not being cornered by strangers and having sex with them because you don't know how to get out of it. Now you've actually picked your person or persons and you want to be there. But now your mind won't let you because your mind has learned to dissociate at the first feeling of sex. So instead of running away, most people become performance artists. As I was explaining, go back and look at that yesterday more. But being a performance artist is when you're fine, you're happy to be there, you want to be having the sex, you want them to be happy, you want you to be happy, but you're not orgasmic. Or if it's not, you know, some people don't want that kind of sex. So whatever your thing is, you don't feel intimate, you don't feel bonded and close, right? You pull away somehow. You start thinking thoughts like, am I good enough? How do I compare? Does he really love me? I gotta do this, the best, best blowjob ever, the best sex because I don't want to come up short. These are not thoughts you should be having. And everybody I talk to with CPTSD, and even the ones without, these are the thoughts they're having while they're having sex. It's like, I understand, because that's all I did too. Until less than 3 years ago, when I was blessed with falling back in touch with somebody that was close to me a long time ago, but not in that way. And after all this work, I'm not saying he's so much better than me, although he is, totally. Edit that out. It's the fact that I had prepared myself. You know when they say luck meets preparation, or luck is opportunity meeting preparation? Well, I got married and divorced 3 times, and I meant it. I loved them. I gave it my all. And I left every one of them thinking I was righteous. And in some ways I was. But now, looking back, I see I added to the problem by never being authentic. I was a role player. But I didn't know that. So give yourself some slack and give people you know who might have CPTSD some slack. There is a way to get better. And learning how to be present is going to first require removing the things that don't fit your life. And we're going to talk a lot more about this when we get to the week 7, the spirit week. There's 8 weeks because the intro and the outro weeks, of course. But so spirit, don't be scared. As I always say, it's not religion and it's not religion. That's not what I mean when I get to spirit, but it is very important. But this element of it is important always. Okay? You, how do I say this succinctly? You have a body. You are not your body. As I said earlier, just want to lead with that. You have a body. You are not your body. And you can't be ruined. And while most women on this planet are bought and sold, in some places traded for livestock as a regular practice, I will talk more about that in Sunday school when I talk about an interview that I watched with a Maasai woman who was so grateful when, after being dragged off at 14 years old by a much older man who her father married her off to in exchange for livestock, she was just happy when he brought a second wife out to live with her, right, and take half the sex. Good job, Linda, not cussing. And make babies, right? And she's like, this is great because now I'm not alone, and now we can make more girls to sell for livestock, to trade. And then the third wife comes home. She was like, oh, her and the first wife, they're super happy. And they're sorry for us because we don't have sister wives. How can we make enough daughters to trade for cows? And I'm just like, I mean, I watched it with my own eyes. And just know. So where I'm going with this with spirit is, I don't care what your religion is or is not. But anybody who disparages against women in any way and calls it culture has their heads up their ass and needs to be stopped. So if you're going to stay with your religion, you need to fix it. Because this is what I was talking about, dissociation on a societal scale, right? On a mass scale, we are just dissociating, and we have been taught to do that for millennia in most of the world. Women, certainly. Others have been taught to hide or die. You know, talk about having it bad, hence why I bought lovemygender.com, which is also one of the shops at sweetsurvivor.com, full of wonderful toys. So, dissociation. Again, yesterday went into the neurological, breakdown more. So, refer to that for that. Don't have a whole lot of time. But rather than, back to the top of the spirit thing, rather than dissociate from your own needs, how about dissociate from the things stopping you from getting them? Okay? No, you can't just throw out the baby with the bathwater immediately, maybe, but not immediately. I'm not saying race away from your partner or your life or your job, but I'm saying start thinking about it. Start tweaking your experience and start removing the things from your life you don't like. You don't want to be in that club, get out of it. You don't want to volunteer for that, get out of it. You don't want to be talked to that way, cut that person off. I have cut people out of my life from close friends from years ago that don't understand what I'm doing, to coaching clients that I'm like, I just can't listen to you whine anymore. I'm sorry for your experience, but like I was saying yesterday, don't compare crosses. I'm not. What happened to me, it happens to women all over this world. And in America, it's bad enough, but at least it's somewhat considered wrong, despite the fact that we still gear all of society to somehow accept it. And we're going to talk all about that in Educate and Advocate, the week after next. 2 weeks, actually. So disassociate from the things. And this goes in hand in hand with the idea of manifestation, okay? I'm going to make manifestation easy for you because people always think manifestation is scary. And it's like, no, or you're a hippie if you talk about it. Not that I'm not that I am. I'm just saying, manifestation means creating what you want. And you can't just wish and hope for that. You have to do something. You have to do something about it. So on a protect other people level, like if you think someone's trafficking someone down the street, how about contact THORN? And if you don't want to, contact me. Contact Sweet Survivor and I will contact THORN. I literally answer all of my chat myself. I do all correspondence myself. This is my baby. My shopping group supports Sweet. I don't want what happened to me to keep being okay. So while I'm helping you as a CPTSD survivor with tips and tricks to deal with it, and there were more of those yesterday. I said today was going to be more about the whole picture. While I'm doing that for you, what the bigger picture is stopping it from happening in the goddamn first place. My son's getting married. I'm guessing, God willing, there'll be grandchildren down the road. I have nieces and nephews. And even if I didn't, I'm a human being. Isn't that enough? Isn't that enough to try to make the world better for other people? So, sorry, I don't mean to get teary, but I would appreciate your $5 a month, $5 a month. You can't get a cup of coffee for $5 a month. And I set up a self-portal, you know, to your app store or lover. You can be a better provider. You can be better at everything if you are also receiving. Because if you are not personally receiving, and I mean on a physical level too, and I get more into this with my coaching clients, but if you're not receiving the same level of, whether it's orgasmic pleasure or emotional intensity, whatever your situation is, from your partner that you want to give, then you're not going to get it. They're not going to feel it. If you don't feel, then all you're giving them is a performance. And they may be happy, it might get the job done, but think how much better the show would be if you weren't in your head comparing yourself to everybody else, wondering if you're good enough, wondering when this is going to stop, whatever, instead of learning to chemically be attracted and sink into the moment. And that is something so important for everybody, and especially CPTSD survivors, is to learn that you are important and that only in being selfish can you be selfless. So we're going to talk more about that next Wednesday. And Those Nasty Women podcasts will be rolling shortly. We will be loading the last 6 workshops on, because you have to start with 6 to 10, they said. So this is 6. Hooray. Look for that. And it's like scheduled, so it'll actually start on time. Me, I work with people. I talk to people on the phone. I have, a charity. I will try to be as on time as I can. And I'll always get on there eventually, so keep looking for the live button if I'm late, all right? Love y'all. Talk to you Wednesday. Ending multiple streams. Again, I apologize for any view I cannot see.